Brian Ayers, welcome to the Biohacking Secret Show.
I am so happy to be here. How you doing today, sir?
Happy to have you as well. I'm doing fantastic. We are going to be talking about sexual health,
Mm-hmm.
predominantly male sexual health, and but we're going to be talking about what women should know about men's sexual health. How does age affect sexual performance? What is the men's sexual performance scale? How did you become a men's performance coach? And basically, how what men can do to become a 10 in
Mm-hmm.
terms of a sexual performance athlete. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that. So if you can give us a little bit of background or your origin story, how did you get into this field? And how did we get to where we're at today?
Sure. A good 23 years ago, 24 years ago, I was with a young lady, and she was from Liberia, and they were having a Christmas party. And so we went to the Christmas party, and there was a root in a bottle. And we said, "Hey, what is that?" And we said, "Well, it's an aphrodisiac." So of course we were like, "Well, pour," and we drank that. The next morning, we woke up in bed giving each other high fives. I was like, "Wow, this really does work." So from there, it was, we went and created a product originally called African Fly, because the herbs were indigenous to Africa and just a nod of a Spanish fly. But from there, it was, we created the product, put it online, first sale in Poland, and we were going for it. The vast majority of guys were loving the product, but there were some guys it didn't work for. And so we're trying to figure out, well, why? What's going on that it doesn't work for all these, works for all these guys, but not these guys? And from there, just asking questions, doing surveys, doing the research, and really it came down to we're selling a supplement, and it's supposed to supplement the other things you're doing. And so people weren't talking about the other things you're supposed to be doing in terms of your health for sexual performance. And so from there, just answering questions, doing a blog, writing books, wrote two books, How to Be a Better Lover in 3 Days or Less and Go Hard. And, it's just kept talking to guys, and eventually just came down to coaching. It was like, well, here's the information, and, just the encouragement to keep going forward and using the information, and, making sure the guys were, staying on point and getting the results that they were looking for. So that got me into the whole side of coaching, and it just kept going deeper and deeper from there.
Now, this African Fly product, do you guys still make this?
Actually, that's been renamed to GoodWood.
GoodWood,
Yes, indeed. Yes.
and where could guys check that out? And I want to know what's in it, of course.
Of course. You can go to givegoodwood.com. That's givegoodwood.com. And and it's an incredible formula. It's a liquid tincture. And so basically, we have 8 different herbs soaked in alcohol, the main component being yahimbe, along with ginger, cinnamon, damiana, cloves, nutmeg. A wonderful concoction of different formulas that all do different things inside of your body in terms of increasing, and it basically comes down to increasing your testosterone and your blood flow to your genital regions. So, guys who take this, it will actually make your hands and feet feel cooler because the blood is being pulled to your genital regions. And so, from there, those two things, testosterone and blood flow, is going to help out with your erections immensely, and that's what it does.
Is
And
it
we also
is it you take it daily, or do you take it, at the time of activity?
depends on your level of sexual health, and that's where I came up with the sexual performance scale. That's a scale of 1 to 10. 10 means everything works. Just imagine a 21-year-old football player who's really healthy. A 1 means that you need to go to the hospital. Most guys who have issues, they're in between a 5 and a 7, in terms of just being reliable.
Hmm.
7 is like, well, some days it works, some days it doesn't. A 6 is like, well, a lot of times it just doesn't. What's going on? But sometimes still get an erection. And a 5 is almost like a guessing game. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Anything
Hmm.
below that, a 4, 3, or 2, then you're falling into erectile dysfunction land, and you need to do a lot more work to get back up the scale. And so when using the scale, whenever I talk to guys, I just ask them where they think they are. They let me know, and we sort of go from there. And I always tell guys, just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just like, I'm a 10. I'm a 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your wife doesn't think so. So what's going on?
So what do you think causes erectile dysfunction? Because this is something that I've seen for at least, I mean, going on 15 years. I remember I was on a man trip, I don't know, maybe a decade ago with a bunch of my friends. And I was surprised at how many of them were like, yeah, I'll just take a Cialis or something like that. Like if it's a first date or not a first date, but you know what I mean? If it's like the first time that we're going to be hooking up, I want to make sure that everything works. So I don't, you know what I mean? And they're like, so I'll just take a Cialis as backup. And I was like, interesting. And a bunch of other guys were like, yeah, me too. And so it sort of it sort of made me realize how many guys that, have had experiences where things weren't, as you say, reliable. What's been going on this past decade or two where so many guys are experiencing these challenges and at younger and younger ages?
Oh yeah. Just to give you a quick look at stats, we're talking about 40% of men over 40 have some form of ED or erectile reliability issue. And of course, our testosterone levels go down by roughly 1% per year. So by age 50 is 50%, by age 60 is 60%, by age 70 is 70%, which sort of tags along. If you looked at a 7-year-old, more than likely, unless he's doing something correctly, he's not having sex. So back to your question, really what's going on is our modern society. So basically, we live in a man-made world. If you think about it, what would happen if we were out in nature? Well, one, we wouldn't have alarm clocks. We would just wake up because the sun was up. Two, we'd probably have less clothes on, obviously, depending on what area of the world you live in. And so, you have sun on your chest and on your genitals, increasing your testosterone. You have deeper sleep because you have, less stress, less technology going on. You'd have less technology, so you're not, staring at screens constantly. You'd also have your food supply is going to be completely different. Fruits and vegetables are the main things, when it comes to eating meat. We've never, in human history, never been able to consume meat at this level. I'm not like a chicken or a cow hugger, but I will say if you have erection issues, then copious amounts of meat is not going to help at all.
Really? Where have you seen that? Is that just
experience and just in the research? So basically, whenever you're eating, basically, if you're eating meat, your blood just basically gets thicker. And so in your penis, you have the capillaries down there, the veins down there. They're the smallest in the body. So you have one blood platelet going through at a time. So whenever you have anything that's clogging up, it's going to clog up down there. And there obviously just a bunch of different issues with the way that the meat is produced nowadays. So, it's like, hey, just reel it back. Whenever you have a particular issue, it's like, well, it sounds sort of drastic, but it's like, well, yeah, if you had, COVID, there's some drastic things that you would need to do to make sure your body is okay. So it's sort of going along in line with that. But basically, when it comes down to, we're in such a man-made situation that we're missing out on a lot, even the small things like laying down on the ground. A lot of guys know you take a car battery, you put it on the ground, it'll drain out. Well, that's because the earth is an energy source, and we as humans should be laying on the earth, maybe like some sheepskin or something like that under it. But it's like we have an energy exchange with the earth that helps with our blood flow. So sun, blood flow, the way that we eat, the way that we breathe, the level of chronic stress that we're under. And also a huge one is 75% of people are chronically dehydrated. Just doing the research, I didn't realize that I was chronically dehydrated until last month. And so I've been drinking water like crazy, and it has a huge effect on your body. So all of these things, you add all of this up, then it's like, well, yeah. I mean, and you think, one of my teachers at University of Maryland said, you have to know your place and time. So if you think about our place and time, what has changed radically just from 100 years ago? Over 100 years ago, less than half of the United States had electricity. People were walking constantly because you didn't have a choice. It was like cars were crazy expensive and horses were crazy expensive. So you were, when your grandfather said he walked up the hill both ways to get to, school, he wasn't lying. So Now we wake up in stress, we get into the car, we go drive somewhere to get the food, then we keep driving to the work, then we eat out the vending machines and come back home and do, rinse, repeat, not eating real food. It becomes a huge problem and it's getting worse. I always tell guys it's good to understand your level of health, especially your sexual health, and so you can pass this information along to both your sons and your daughters, because we're hitting a point where it's like we have guys in this generation who are dealing with uh, needing Cialis and Viagra. In the next generation, they're going to need even more. Before, diabetes was the disease of the rich. Now it's the disease of 10-year-olds. So
Mm-hmm.
things are constantly changing and not getting healthier. We have the information. We have shows like yours, shows like mine on YouTube. But if you can get the information, but we're so far removed from what we should actually be doing.
Yeah, if we want to retain the capacity to reproduce and choose when we do that, we got to make some changes for sure. I've thought a lot about what you were describing too, because we've seen such a rapid change in many of these health conditions, whether it's cancer, diabetes, heart disease, etc. And I was like, okay, so it's been exponential with some of these disease states. What else has been exponential? And you hit the nail on the head with electricity. And there's a fascinating book called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. Dr. Joseph Mercola wrote a book called EMF. And like we knew in the 60s that living around high voltage power lines correlated with cancer and chronic fatigue and other disease states, depression, right? Well, now with our phones and Wi-Fi and 5G and all that, we've taken that same electricity and we've just started spraying it everywhere in the air rather than even containing it at power lines. But people don't make the same connection. They're not like electricity, probably doing some of the same shit in the body, right? So that's a big one. And then, of course, our devices are super addictive. So we're in front of them all the time. And I think we're sort of looking at this bifurcation of society where some people are going to go the transhumanism route and just basically become automatrons, little human robots. And then other people are going to be like, no, I want to get back to nature because all these things that I'm paying for and that I need to do all the time in order for my body to function the way that it's supposed to, that all happens naturally when I'm living as the piece of nature, as a part of nature, which I am. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big one. Plastics everywhere. That's been exponential. You look at our oceans and some of these masses of plastics that are like, continents and countries of just garbage. I think the shots that we're giving to our children, those have gone up exponentially. And a lot of the evidence around those is pretty weak. And then, of course, glyphosate, these pesticides. Those are all things that have exploded exponentially recently and probably all having an impact, not to mention the soul and spirit aspect of it, where like we are a part of nature. If you take us and put us in a little concrete box in a high rise in a city with no plants, no animals, no insects, recycled air, recycled water, it's going to affect our vitality and it's going to affect our spirit and our capacity to, support the expansion of life, if you will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, one of a program that we have is called ECS 25. That's ESEIS: energy, sleep, exercise, intermittent fasting, and soul. And basically, what we've done is, look at those 5 categories because we say that if you lived 2,000 years ago or 500 years from now, as a human, you still have to deal with these 5 things. And the first 3 of them, your mother would say, is like, go outside and play and get your sleep and, eat your fruits and vegetables. The other 2 is like, well, intermittent fasting. When you're a kid, you don't really need that. But and so hopefully as a kid, you weren't that stressed. But, right now, but maybe think of that when you said soul, we're chronically stressed. So, before our bodies are designed to worry about, lions, real threats, not like my Netflix bill is late or something like that, where you end up with, a constant level of stress going on so that your body is constantly pumping out cortisol. And so the cortisol is going to make you retain fat. It's going to basically wear out your body, increase your your blood pressure, all of those different things. Basically, because we're in a you're stressed driving to work, you're stressed at work, you're stressed driving back home. You finally get home and you sit in front of the TV, and you can look at something like the Game of Thrones and watch every episode. A good 3 or 4 people get killed in the most fascinating ways. All of this adds up.
Yeah.
And so, you end up in a situation where you're just stressed on all different levels, not only the environmental and spiritual level that you spoke of, but also just health-wise, just dealing with other people. And also what you mentioned in terms of being in a high-rise in your own box, the number of people who are connecting with each other is dipping tremendously. So especially dealing with the past COVID,
the Holocaust.
Yeah, the Holocaust. Exactly. I like that. Yeah, I mean, so you have, it's showing up in kids, it's showing up in the amount of people who are, the alcohol sales that are going up, the, self-deletion that is occurring. So we have a lot of issues. So to get all the way back to your question, all of that is affecting us. So, it's, I just did a video on, we have to reverse engineer, our life. And so that, you're getting as close to nature as possible, getting out in nature, going for a morning walk. The number of recommendations that I do for my clients and, for the people that see me on YouTube, it all comes back to the exact same thing. I'm telling you to do stuff that your grandparents did, that your grandfather did. And by the way, your grandfather had a good, much higher level of testosterone than the men these days do. In fact, they keep downgrading the testosterone levels. At one point, it was like 1,200. Now they're saying, 800 is fine. I'm quite sure in the next generation, they'll say 600 is fine.
Yeah.
No, this is not the direction we're supposed to be going.
Totally. I'm curious. So in just a second, I'm going to ask you about like things to stop doing and things to start doing for stronger erections, higher libido, sex drive, and all that. So I'm just planting that seed so the back of your mind can be working on it. But witnessing how many of these things, the phytoestrogens, the plastics, the chemicals, and the fact that like there's a lot of people that think the world is overpopulated. And a lot of those people run a lot of the big corporations that produce the food and a lot of this stuff. Do you think this is intentional, or are you like, nah, it's just a you know what I mean? It's just a lot of shit that's bad for us all kind of coming to the surface at once. Like, do you think that they're trying to control the population by affecting breeding, or is that just me being conspiratorially minded?
I would say on some level there probably is, but that number is probably extremely small as compared to the number of people just trying to get money.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I have a company and we're trying to sell water, the number of bottles, I'm trying to sell water. If I have a company, like a TikTok or Instagram, it's like, my algorithm is going to try to get people to keep watching videos. Even if they're tired of watching the videos, they're still going to pick up their phone and watch more videos. Yeah.
How do you make it more addicting? And then by chance, those people just end up, buzzing themselves and spiking their cortisol. And then all of a sudden they're not horny.
Yeah. And speaking of that is even, when we talk about the sexual realm, we're talking about something that's very, very much a part of what we're supposed to do. I mean, we have the greatest entertainment set in the world is between our legs. So in the middle of our body. And so when it comes to something like porn, that's what really kicked off the internet to begin with. And it's still bigger than Netflix. And, we're talking about guys who, get addicted to porn. It's like, what we're here for is to have sex. I mean, that's obviously we do other things as a society, as humans, but that's the primary goal is to go forth and reproduce. And when we take that and we've sort of taken it too far to a level that, we have a bunch of guys who they can't function because they watch so much porn. Their brains got rewired to thinking that what's on screen is what you're supposed to be attracted to. Now, when they're with an actual human, the dopamine receptors have been shut off because it's been
Mm-hmm.
flooded consistently with
Yeah.
all of the different drugs that are supposed to be attached to another human.
Mm-hmm.
So we now have that issue as well. Uh, so yeah, I don't think it's extremely purposeful. Maybe some people thought that back in the day, but if you look at the numbers, we're actually the population is starting to shrink, and I think, and this goes into, we have women who are more in the workforce, so they're delaying
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy and
Yeah.
all of that stuff.
So many
But
facets.
yeah, but we're also going to be dealing with, in the next generation, a number of young men who won't be attracted to women because they've grown up on porn, and who
Mm-hmm.
also have all the things that we are dealing with, just a little bit older, they're dealing with when they're younger. When I was a
Yep.
kid, McDonald's closed. If McDonald's was a treat, now McDonald's
Mm-hmm.
for some people is like every day, morning and night.
Mm-hmm.
And so that applies to a lot of different things, the way we live.
Totally. I had heard that about 30% of all the traffic on the internet is to porn sites.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a funny, like, one of the, whatever, like, the most recent Chris Rock stand up was, or I don't know if it's the most recent, but it came out within the past couple of years. He was talking about how porn like ruined his marriage, and he was discussing that that arousal threshold that keeps getting raised when you engage
Mm-hmm.
in porn, and how it got to a point where he needed like the craziest shit just to even get aroused. He's like, I needed like half blonde, half Asian twins. One of them needed to be wearing an eye patch. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff. He's like, for it to even excite me. And he goes, and then I was being a terrible husband, and you know what I mean? And for him to admit that on, in front of a ton of people, I thought was pretty cool, because there are so many guys that struggle with this in private. And like, I give this analogy somewhat recently, where if like you and I are working for National Geographic and we're like out in Africa and we're studying monkeys, right? And there's like this monkey, and he's on a branch with a male monkey's on a branch with a female monkey, and they're like feeling each other and they're having sex. And then we notice on a nearby tree, there's another male monkey, and he's watching them just beating his little monkey pecker, right? We would be like, if you and I don't have to be like scientists to be like, all right, that's the alpha, that's the beta, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're the ones doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we sit and we watch porn and masturbate, we're being the beta monkey, and there's no way that doesn't affect our hormone levels and our subconscious mind and how our physiology responds. So like, personally, what I do now is I try not to watch porn at all, and I do a pretty good job of that for the most part. I certainly like, I try to actually just use my imagination if I'm going to do it. And there's been a lot of people that I've had on that talk about semen retention and the Taoist culture of actually preserving that energy, that life force, that chi, if you will, and allowing that to recycle, and how that can increase vitality in males. And a lot of the traditional Chinese medicine, the Ayurvedic cultures believe that. So I'm more conscious now about not even doing that, but when I do, that's an opportunity to use the theater of our mind, rather than going into sending those signals to our brain, where we go into beta monkey mode, and then we're wondering why we don't want to pursue women,
Yeah. And it's I talk about this a lot because, there's that difference between porn and masturbation. Sometimes people just conflate the two because it's because you can nowadays. But, it's like you said, being able to use your own imagination and take care of yourself is actually something that's useful from the standpoint if you're not having sex. So for guys who are not having sex, you still need, just like any other body part, you need blood flow down there, so the oxygen is getting down there, the nerves are staying attached and things like that. If you get to a point where there's no blood flow going down there, just like any other part of the body is going to atrophy. And with the atrophy, you're actually talking about the scarification inside the blood vessels, and it's hard to come back from that. So I would say to guys, it's like, hey, actually, I just learned a great tip. If you have your wife or woman, however you get down, set sex dates. And what that actually does, it allows you to, okay, I know that on name your days. Tuesdays and Fridays, that's the days that me and the missus, we get together and we do our thing. That way, it's no guessing. She knows, you know, and you can also
pop a little GoodWood.
Yeah, you know what to do. Get yourself scheduled up. Get yourself scheduled up. Because there's different things in a when we talk about what women need to know. I call it the Valentine's Day syndrome. Valentine's Day for a guy who's a 5, 6, or 7 on the sexual performance scale is a horrible day because you're talking about one. I'm already dealing with a level of stress because I'm not sure whether or not I'll be able to perform. And then you go get her the chocolates and you have some chocolate yourself, so that sugar is going to lower your testosterone. And then you're going to go have that meal. You're going to have, steak and lobster and potatoes. So you got the sugar from the potatoes lowering your testosterone. You have the steak and lobster that's clouding your blood, causing inflammation. And, you're going to have a little drink and maybe another dessert. And, and maybe go back home and have some more drinks. And it's a perfect cocktail for this is not going to work at all. And so the reason why I say that women should be aware of that so that they can help in terms of like recognizing that, hey, we need to pay attention to certain foods. We need to get more fruits and vegetables into your diet. Maybe we don't need to go to the restaurant this day if we want this to happen. All of this plays back into that sex date because Valentine's Day to a point is a sex day. If you know that you're going to have sex that day, there's certain things that you can, do in terms of like, obviously don't recommend drinking beer or alcohol or whatever. But if you're going to do that, if especially as you get older, drinking that day can cause problems. Drinking the older you get, drinking the day before or even the day before that can cause you problems, especially if you already have issues. So you can sort of time out what you're doing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to have my fun. It's like we had our sex on Tuesday. Wednesday is my day to just, maybe I'm just going to do whatever. It's my cheat day, whatever you want to call that. But I know that Thursday and Friday, I'm back on it in order for me to get to a point where we can have a good time.
Yeah. Got to try to get like Craig David in that song. Anyway, it's like a 30-year-old reference. No one's going to get that. So you actually reminded me of a story too. One of the guys on our team, I won't name his name, even though I think it's actually a good story, but a couple of years ago, he was noticing he felt like he wasn't connecting with his wife as well or as frequently as he wanted. And it sort of resulted in him starting to watch porn. And him and I had some of these discussions, and just because like we're all sort of figuring this out, it's all a lot of new territory. You know what I mean? And you've covered a lot of this in your books, Go Hard, and how to be a better lover, and that sort of thing, and on your website, givegoodwood.com. But one of the things that he did, like as an experiment, was he was like, you know what? I'm not going to emotionally cheat on my wife by pleasuring myself and watching other women. He goes, so if I want to masturbate, I'm actually going to think about my wife. And that was like just something that he decided himself. He didn't tell her nothing. Called me up like a month in and he was like, dude, everything is better. He goes, literally everything. It was almost like this quantum shift took place in his marriage where when he stopped looking at other women, when he stopped pleasuring himself to other women, even just digitally, and actually started thinking about his wife, not only did his attraction increase, some of the hostility that his wife had towards him, some of the resistance that she had towards them coming together physically, it all disappeared.
Yeah, I can believe that. I've gone through that transformation myself in terms of, porn was there, since I was, teenager. It was like, you just get to it. Now it's just in your pocket. So it's like, wow, this is great. But it does come with that cost of like, it does put that distance between you. And in fact, you have guys who like, well, while I'm having sex, going back to the Chris Rock reference, while having sex, I'm thinking of other women. I have to, because I can't get an erection with just her. And speaking, I did another podcast with a lady, and she was saying, basically, that of course they can tell, maybe totally. maybe not, a direct way, but just like, there's something, this barrier, there's something that's missing. You're not the same. And so
you look vacant.
Yeah. You're like staring off into the distance. It's like, what are
Yeah.
you thinking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there is a huge shift, and I can attest to that. When I did go through that process of like, oh, okay, let me just cut this back and just just focus in on her. It's like it was that quantum shift to like all of a sudden while having sex, I no longer needed to think of
Hmm.
anyone else or anything else,
Hmm.
and the level of sexual pleasure was so much higher. Being able to last longer was, it wasn't like me having a mental game with myself,
Yeah.
just in terms of like, yeah, maybe if she does this, this will turn me, or she does that, or maybe if I think of, her in this position, you're just now there in the moment. And I think that's the most important thing that porn takes away. It takes
Hmm.
away from the ability for you to be intimate, which means basically you're into your mate.
Mm.
So
I've never
if
heard
you're
that.
yeah. If you're into your mate, it becomes so much more enjoyable. You become such a much better performer to the
Hmm.
point that it's like, oh, I mean, it just gives you its own reward. It gives you yourself back as a
Hmm.
reward for avoiding
Yeah.
porn. Hmm.
Yeah. And I want to mention too, like so this was maybe, I'm guessing like 2018 that I decided if I was going to do it, I was going to use my imagination. And I just want to mention that it wasn't it was actually kind of hard at first. I remember I was like, when I started doing it, it was almost like my imagination wasn't working right
Mm.
because I had given it such like it had gotten lazy. My imagination had almost gotten lazy where I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that, right? And I remember, and I was there, and it was like I was just like, this isn't happening, And the easy thing would have been to just go back to what I had been doing, but I was like, no, like I made a pact that if I'm going to do it, this is how I'm going to do it,
Hmm.
and eventually it actually started coming back. So I
Mm.
want to mention that just because if any guys decide that they want to make shifts in this or change their relationship or cut the porn out, which I highly, highly recommend, like
Absolutely.
don't expect just to like have everything totally normal. It's like it's sometimes it takes practice like most things in life.
Yeah, and what they've found, just doing studies, is that watching porn actually does rewire your brain.
Hmm.
And we're talking about two different, your electrical system, your nervous system, and your
Hmm.
hormonal system.
Yeah.
So if you're flooding your body with a whole bunch of hormones, and that's what watching porn, especially over a long period of time, does. It's like it's flooding your body with dopamine, and you have dopamine receptors. The
Hmm.
dopamine receptors turn off because
Hmm.
it's like, I can't handle this. This is just way too much. So
Yeah.
now, when you get with a person and your body's flooding you with the dopamine, the receptors are like, I'm good. I'm tired. I don't
Hmm.
I don't know who she is.
Hmm.
Weren't we just watching like 15 different women?
Hmm.
Over the past 5 minutes, just the other day. I mean, the level of and porn has been around since the beginning of man. In ancient Rome, people would not spray paint, but they would paint different signs. Just they had the statues. So this has always been here. It's just that we now at a super intense level.
Yeah. And way more hardcore.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I got a question. Let's talk about some of the things that like the stop doing,
Okay.
for guys that want stronger erections, higher libido. And I'll kind of segue with a story back to like those man trips, right? So I remember one time we were in Japan, and it was like the last night there. We were all wiped, and
Mm.
one of my buddies pulled out some Adderall, and he was like, "Here, take some Adderall, and that'll give us all a little bit of energy to like stay out and whatever." And I remember taking some Adderall, and of course, like I was like awake, and we stayed out until our flight. But I remember I had like no libido or sex drive for like the next couple of days. And I was like,
Hmm.
what the heck? It was almost like function down there was suppressed. And now that apparently doesn't happen to everybody, but it
Mm.
was very noticeable for me because I came back and I was like, all right, is my everything going to work again, or what's going on here?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think pharmaceuticals, right? And things like
Absolutely.
that. For some guys, depending on the pharmaceutical, depending on how your body responds, could be something that might be affecting your libido, pharmaceutical stimulants. What are some of the big things that you're seeing affect
Mm.
guys in the erection and libido department negatively?
I would say the first thing is sleep.
Okay.
Um, once again with dealing with electricity, we're able to stay up to hours that our ancestors never did because it was
Mm-hmm.
dark.
Mm-hmm.
If you kept that campfire going, animals come to you.
Mm-hmm.
So when it gets dark, you go to sleep. There was nothing else to do. And in fact, in England, way back in the day, they had second sleep. In fact, there were Bible verses written because people would wake up and either have sex or read Bible verses and then go back to sleep. So
Hmm.
our sleep patterns are completely different. And if you're Netflixing and chilling and, you go to sleep randomly at different times, it's like our bodies like patterns. So
Mm-hmm.
just like the earth likes a pattern. It's like the sun comes up at this time and, it may change over the seasons, but it has the same pattern all the time. And so if you're waking up if you're going to sleep at 9:30, 8:30, 10:30, 12:30, 1:30, and then you wake up whenever you wake up, what happens is one, your immune system gets compromised. If you only have 4 hours of sleep, your immune system is compromised. When I say that, I mean that your cancer cells go up and your immune system goes down. Your testosterone develops overnight. And so the less sleep that you have, the less your body has the ability to create more testosterone. That happens during the REM state. In fact, during your sleep, you have 4 to 5 erections while asleep. And so if you're missing those, it's sort of like a recharge. Your body's like,
Mm-hmm.
just checking the system, make sure everything works.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason for a morning wood
Mm-hmm.
is basically that fifth erection that you're just waking up to. So without sleep, and I tell guys, especially if you're working out, you get your 2 hours in, you're just going for it. You're eating great, all this wonderful stuff, and you get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, you basically wasted a whole bunch of time.
Mm-hmm.
You wasted a whole bunch of
Mm-hmm.
good. So definitely sleep, because that's a basic. And the next one, as I mentioned before, is water. That's a huge one because basically, if you look at bodybuilders, people who go to the gym all the time, they're walking around with like gallonfuls of water.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically when you drink water, it's actually filling your muscles. Your
Mm-hmm.
muscles need the water as your fat doesn't absorb water. And so, of course, muscle burns fat. So that helps with metabolism. Also, when it comes to nutrition, if you're taking a bunch of supplements, like GoodWood, it's better that you have that your body is fully hydrated because your body will not accept supplement. It won't accept certain nutrients if it's dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you're constantly under stress, so your testosterone levels are going down. Then the bursting and burning of testosterone is what fuels an erection. So if you're constantly lowering your erections, then constantly lowering your testosterone. Obviously, that's going to affect your erections. And the most beautiful thing of drinking as much, getting the right amount of water, is that you will actually get bigger down there because that's a muscle. So
say that drinking more water actually increases the size of your penis.
Yes, it's a smooth muscle. It's not a skeletal muscle like our other muscles, but it's a muscle nonetheless. So if you're increasing the amount of water that you're drinking, not only will you have stronger erections, because it does so many other things to your body. Your skin looks better, your hair looks better,
Mm-hmm.
you actually smell better. All of this is attached to water, and in order to understand, for me to understand it, I knew this thought process before, like you have to drink water, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize I was chronically dehydrated until I got a scale. It's called Withings. You can find, I found it on Amazon, but basically it's an electrical scale that, it can measure not only your bone density, your bone mass, your BMI, but it also can measure your water. And so men are supposed to be at 60% water, women at 55%. And I was chronically at pouring water there.
Yeah. See if I can add a couple inches before we're done.
Yes, absolutely. Go for it. Your wife will thank you. But yeah, I was at 49%, and I got the scale back in January, and I was at 49%. Never paid attention, and I remembered it's like, hold up, isn't it supposed to be at 60%? So now I drink so much more water. It actually takes you a period of time for your body to actually absorb the water. So it's not like I'm dehydrated, like I'm just tired, or I've been out in the desert. It's like I'm dehydrated because my body has to take time to absorb the water that I'm drinking. So,
Did your scale readings change?
yeah, yeah.
What are
I'm
you at
already
now?
I'm at 55%, and this has been like 3 weeks of me just going for it. And of course, being 50, it takes longer for that absorption to happen. In fact, go ahead and tell your parents you need to drink more water as you get older. And this is this goes back to both things that I was saying. As you get older, you get less high quality sleep, and you actually it's harder for you to retain water. So those two things are you really have to really pay attention to, because that affects everything else.
Yeah, that's dope. I want to also mention my friend Isabel Friend, who we've had on the podcast. She's got a great website, waterislife.shop, that has all sorts of water filtration, structuring, energizing products. So if like, because most of us realize, like, if there's a whole bunch of fluoride and chlorine and chemicals in the water, and then all of a sudden we just start drinking more tap water, we might be also simultaneously clearing out our gut microbiome and like causing other issues. But if you want to get, like, I would go to waterislife.shop, Isabel's site, get some good filtration products, get some good things for like structuring your water, or even like go get yourself some quality spring water or whatever works for you. But those are some tools that can help make sure you're putting the right kind of water in your body. And then kind of working on this. I wanted to ask you too, the like you mentioned foods for stronger erections.
Yes.
And you've talked about how like too much meat, you've seen that have the opposite effect. I've also noticed that, kind of tying into that like overtraining thing, like when I'm trying to cut weight, if I'm working out a lot and like too low in calories and sometimes even carbs, I can notice that seems to negatively affect my libido and sex drive. And like and then I'll usually notice, and I'm like, wait, why is my like sex drive low, or like why are things, and I'm like, oh, I've been cutting too much. I haven't been, I'm basically sending biological signals to my body that there's not enough food, and it's like not gonna then provide me with the hormonal response or the biological response to like bring life into this world. You know what I mean? On the food side, like what do guys want to be putting in their body that is if a guy's having erectile issues, how does he want to be fueling himself?
Okay. Just want to answer that, but want to get to something that you said that's really important. Because I used to do this too, overtrain. So when you're overtraining, you're actually increasing your cortisol. So anytime you do exercise, you're increasing your cortisol. If guys, you really want to cut, doing a lot of walking, when you walk, that burns fat. You use fat for fuel. But getting back to the question about the type of food, there's only one aisle in the grocery store you should be in. That's the fruit and vegetable aisle. Going back to what I was saying before about water, if you think about it, we are literally water bags, chemical water bags. We have reactions to what's outside of us. But if we're constantly going through, everything else in the grocery store is dry. Even the meat is dry. And so that's the reason why so many people are chronically dehydrated, is because we're constantly putting in, the chips, alcohol dehydrates you, coffee to a point dehydrates you.
Yeah, some caffeine.
The sugar, we're absorbing too much dry stuff. So if you're going to increase your libido, your testosterone, all of it. I mean, think about it. All of the things that we have available to us in the grocery in the produce aisle is moisture. It's water. It's obviously not as much in the leaves, but definitely in the fruits and vegetables. I mean, in the fruits, some vegetables. But once your body knows exactly what to do with these products. A lot of things that we have that we're eating right now, they've only been on the planet for the past 20 years. Some of them you go back a good, like maybe 100 years. Maybe, I'm not sure how long Doritos have been out, but potato chips is relatively new. Cereal, before Kellogg and Post came out, I think it was the late 1800s with cereal. people weren't consuming cereal,
Mm-hmm.
which is dry. I mean, we just wet it up with milk, and milk, by the way, does lower testosterone.
Yeah.
Um,
It's dead.
so,
It's not even like the real milk that our ancestors
mhm,
drank, with all the bacteria that's needed to digest it.
exactly. So, you know, so yeah, in terms of the foods, I mean, there's so many benefits of so many different things. I definitely go with watermelon because it has the L-citrulline, which is
Yeah.
going to help you with your testosterone.
Hmm.
And after that, just everything, almost everything. The thing that you have to be careful about is, um, you know, there's a lot of GMO foods out there. So whenever you're
Yeah.
getting the watermelon, make sure you get the black seeded
Hmm.
watermelon.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's hard to find watermelon that has seeds,
It
period,
is. It
which
is.
is scary. And you even think about bananas; those little dots that are in the bananas, those used to be seeds.
Mm.
The bananas that are now today don't look anything like what they were before. They were hybrids and all the different things that the
Yeah.
scientists did with them. But I would definitely say a banana is way better than a Snickers bar.
Yeah.
So if you stay in there, stay in that aisle, the thing I tell guys to do, because I understand the process. I used to eat 200 plus animals a month. So it's a bacon
Damn, that's
egg,
an interesting way of looking at it.
yeah, bacon egg sandwich. It's two animals, and I got a chicken sandwich for lunch. That's three, and then four wings and shrimp fried rice. I don't know how many that is, but that's 10. So if I'm doing 10 a day, not including like there's going to be that football party. So I
Yeah.
can get my wings there, then a happy hour, then
Yeah.
go to the
Yeah.
club, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
I went from that, 200 plus to now I'm like roughly at 4 a month, and I feel so much better for it, et cetera, et cetera. I'm actually healthier now at 51 than I was at 35. So once again, to get guys to that point, the thing that I say to change your diet, go ahead and eat some fruit or vegetable before you eat a meal.
Yeah.
And that way, two things happen. You mentioned your gut microbiome. So within your gut has, all these trillions of bacteria and fungi that are breaking down the food and turning it into you. So you basically have to train your gut to want this food, because your gut, well, if it created a nation of, like, I used to like oatmeal cream pies for some
Hmm.
crazy reason.
Yeah.
Uh,
Those they were delicious
yeah, I would,
before we knew any
I would,
better.
I tortured those things. And so, the reason why I had the hunger for it is because I created a nation of that microbe, in my gut, of all this
Hmm.
bacteria that would send signals up to my brain to say,
Totally.
hey, go get that. And
Hmm.
so for guys who you feel like you're addicted to a certain food, that's the reason why you've trained your body to want that food. It has
Hmm.
signals coming from your gut. So when
Hmm.
you start incorporating the food that your body can actually use, that it is better designed for, it'll start craving that. It isn't immediate. It does take some time, but I will tell you this much: the way to look at it is what I call food injuries. And so you can tell a food injury, like the easiest way to see a food injury is just watch old people as they're going into like a buffet, Golden
Hmm.
Corral around here. They'll get their little walk to them, but they're walking into the Golden Corral. They go in there, they eat the ribs and the chicken and the salmon and the cakes and the juices, and then they go off. The body goes off like that. Just starts barking at them. Your so as they're walking out, they're actually limping. They're actually, like, oh, that was good, but my knee and this and that.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, your body's inflamed now because
Hmm.
you're not supposed to be eating those foods. So, if you're, and a lot of people don't notice this, pay attention to what you eat. If you ever, I'm sitting down, I stand up, and it's like, ow, that hurt, especially as you get older. I think Cedric the Entertainer said, you reach for a bowl of cereal and your knee pops. It was like that was not a physical injury. That wasn't you at the gym. That was your body saying, "Hey, this inflammation is taking over here."
Yep.
That's the reason why that's happening. And if you're looking at older people, what's the number one thing they look like? They look like they're stiff.
Hmm.
That's because they're eating foods that cause inflammation, and it makes you stiffer.
100%. And I think it's actually a blessing to be able, like, there's certain people that feel nothing from anything they do. You know what I mean? And, you
Mm-hmm.
know, whether that's a gift or a curse, you know what I mean? It is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. But there are also people who, if they eat, you know, a single serving of an inflammatory food, there's an injury site, or they notice a change in their body, their back hurts, or you know, that knee or that old sports injury starts to act up a little bit. That can also be a very extreme blessing, where
Mm-hmm.
it can guide us towards the foods that will increase our life force, increase our connection to God, the divine, our creator, increase our energy, allow us to feel more alive and pack more into this experience here if we listen. Or we can just piss and moan, like, why does Joe or Betty get to eat whatever he or she wants, and I need to make choices? You know what I mean? It's really just
Oh
your
yeah,
perspective and whether you see it as a gift or a curse.
absolutely. Mine is salmon. It started with salmon.
Mm-hmm.
I used to love salmon, tear salmon up, and I would cook it, all different types of ways. Loved it. Didn't have it for a while as I was going through my transformation of not eating as much meat. And
Mm-hmm.
then, hey, it was sitting there, had to have it, and I did. And the next day, I woke up and I couldn't walk. It was,
Mm.
my right knee was just like, no. And so I went back onto, not eating certain meats and things like that. And then one day I went, just had the salmon again, and it just said, okay, you just didn't pay attention. So I'm going to remind you right now.
Yeah.
No, it was like, it was
First,
to the point that
first you
that's
get
what I
the
needed.
hammer, then you get the 2x4.
Exactly. Exactly. It was like I thought I needed knee surgery. It was
Yeah.
that bad. I was in pain up at night. It was just a bad situation. So um, for the guys who pay attention to that, it's going to make a big difference. And especially when it comes to your erections, there are certain
Mm-hmm.
foods that are going to affect you that way too. So whenever I do coaching for a guy, I'm always asking, what is your? I'm just looking at your history. I'm just looking at your food history, your sleep history. Um, Part of ECS 25, the ESEIS, it's called ECS 25 because that's how you score. It's a daily challenge game. You're
Mm-hmm.
scoring yourself in each 5 categories with 5 points. And so you set your own goals. So, for example, if I wanted to start cutting back on the amount of meat that I eat, and I wanted to replace a meat meal with, just fruits and vegetables or whatever I'm going to eat, or some vegan food, it's like, okay, that's my goal. So
Mm-hmm.
if I do that, as far as energy is concerned, eating is concerned, then I get 5 for that. If I get good 7 to 8 hours sleep, I get 5 for that. If I didn't do exercise, didn't do exercise a day, I get 0.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do intermittent fasting, so you're scoring yourself. The idea is that once you get to 25, your body starts to heal itself exponentially quicker because it's designed for that. Your body is fighting cancer cells, it's fighting things that you're not aware of constantly. And so if you give it the things that it needs to function correctly, it will do it very quickly. If you score 20 on this, you're doing good. You're doing good. It's not exponentially fast, but you're doing very well. If you're scoring a 15 on that, you're doing maintenance. The problem with maintenance is that over time, you're getting older, so maintenance will start falling off. If you're at a 0, 5, or a 10, as in you don't do anything on this list, you eat crap, you sleep like crap, you don't do any exercise, you eat constantly, so there's no intermittent fasting, and you're stressed out of your mind, you're on what we call the downward cycle. The downward cycle, it is vicious. The older you get, the worse it becomes, the faster you have different issues.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I kind of two more questions as we kind of bring this home. Um, what's like a normal day look like for you in terms of food? What do you eat? What's on the menu? Because some guys, if you tell them to go from there's probably men and women listening who, they're killing 200 animals a month right now,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
possibly dealing with libido issues or erectile issues, and they want to start cutting that down,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know where to start. What are some of the things that you put in your body, and the foods that you find yourself going to most frequently?
Okay. Well, first I do intermittent fasting. So I don't eat breakfast. I typically don't eat until like 1 o'clock. So I have a 16-hour window of not eating, 8 hours of eating food. So to start with that process, I'll get to the food in a second, but to start with that process, it's sort of like baby's feeding time. It's
Hmm.
the same thing for humans. Pavlov's dog, it's like a certain time of the day we're ready to just go ahead and eat. So what I had to do, because I used to love eating at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's like, okay, I went to eating at 8 o'clock, then I went to eating at 9 o'clock, then I went to eating at 10 o'clock, over a period of time to where it became much easier for my body to adjust to that. So I don't think about it anymore. And the great thing about that is because your testosterone is building overnight, as soon as you eat, your testosterone stops, your human growth hormone stops producing because your body has to deal with what you just put inside of it. So that helps me in terms of breakfast food. But I definitely, I'm a good 80% plant based and 20% vegan at this point. So I live across the street from a Qdoba, which is basically like a Chipotle type of thing.
Hmm.
And so, the food there, I get the rice, the beans, the peppers, the cilantro, and things like that. And I'll have impossible meat on there as well. And outside of that, I'm trying to, as much as possible, focus in on getting in as much fruits and vegetables as possible. I have my collection of apples and oranges over there, and if you look at my refrigerator, it's like, oh God, this guy is really freaking healthy. But I'm also human, so I don't take it too far. The one thing I don't want people to do is to start stressing themselves about the food, because you're already stressed. You already have enough cortisol to sit there like, oh, God, I have to eat this apple, but I want a Twinkie. It's
Hmm.
obviously it's better if you go for the apple, but
Hmm.
it is, put the good stuff into your body first.
Hmm.
That's the main rule. As soon as you're doing that process, it becomes a lot easier over a period of time. Uh, do not think that, well, two things. It needs to become a lifestyle, because once you get older, all of this stuff gets way more different, way more difficult. Your body's ability to take in nutrients, your body's ability to retain water, to get good sleep, all of those things start fading. That's the reason why you see people literally
Hmm.
look like they're getting older. So you have to uh, uh, do this in a way that becomes a lifestyle. Once again, this took me a period of time of doing this. And to help with that process, I would definitely say start looking at, YouTube channels like mine. Let's give GoodWood on YouTube. And look at different movies where, like, What the Health, and different movies like that, where they're talking about it. Because basically, all you have to do, you're just unlearning what you have learned. You must unlearn what we have learned.
Hmm.
Because we've been told to do this stuff our entire lives. Our mothers say, "Oh yeah, go ahead, eat this, and you need to eat this, and you need to eat this, et cetera, et cetera." We have to unlearn it because it's all unnatural. We didn't have the information before. Bless you, mommy. I'm not blaming you, but it's just what they thought was the right information, and turns out it's not. We have the internet. They didn't have that back then.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the main thing to pay attention to, is just get the good food inside of your stomach first. Even if you want to, eat something that you're not supposed to eat,
Hmm.
eat something that you're supposed to eat first. And, it'll also help fill your stomach, and definitely drink as much water as you can. Get yourself a scale, get yourself up to the 60% as a guy that you need to be at.
Okay. And this may be a little bit redundant. So
Mm-hmm.
it's okay if it is, if we've already covered it, but like, what are your top 3 to 5 things that, that will help 80% of guys that are dealing with erection issues right now? The 3 to 5 changes that they need to do. I'm assuming one of them is involves, your supplement, get good wood, taking
Mm-hmm.
that, but you tell us.
Okay. Yeah. Once again, so it goes, sleep is at the top of that list. Water, make sure you're at that water stage, and getting your fruits and vegetables in, uh, all the nutrients and everything that you need, that you're trying to look for in, everything else. I mean, think about it. There are 250,000 edible plants on the planet. We only consume 4% of that.
Hmm.
So uh, the, the planet is designed to give us things to eat that we can, that our bodies are pre-programmed to store.
Yep.
So get that into your system. Slow down with the dried fruits. So that's 4. And Yeah, definitely. In terms of stress, we haven't talked about this enough, but in terms of stress, that's a huge one, especially for guys who have weight issues. Um, if you're constantly kicking off that cortisol is going to lower your testosterone. So, I mean, think about it. Have you ever seen a guy in a fight with an erection? If you did,
I hope not.
If he did, he was on something.
The guy tries to fight me and he's got an erection. I'm running.
This turns you on.
You win.
Yeah, exactly. But it's because your body is spiking up the adrenaline and cortisol. So cortisol stays in your system. It's not like your the nervous system, which is electric. Your hormonal system, when it releases that cortisol, it stays in your body. So any guy who's been under a high level of stress, you're not turned on, you're not thinking about sex. Some guys, it doesn't matter. But for most guys, if your cortisol levels are high, your stress level is high consistently all the time, you're wearing yourself out. You're going to cause a whole bunch of different problems. So those are like the big things right there. We can go. We talked about the plastics, the different things that you have to be concerned about. That the amount of lights, the amount of sitting down that you do. In terms of exercise, they say work out. 3 times a week for about an hour. That's literally less than 2% of your week.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like that's not the way that humans functioned before. At the very least, walking was just something that was just, ridiculously mandatory. Or, if you're living in a high-rise building, using the steps before elevators were available. So it is about, your body's all about movement. So you have to get the movement in and you have to restore yourself with that sleep.
Love it. Love it. Brian, thank you. This has been a fun conversation. I've enjoyed it. Guys, if you've gotten value from Brian, you want to support him, go to givegoodwood.com. There's a GW15 discount code for 15% off of his GoodWood product for erections at GW15. You also reminded me, so I've got this bag here of these apricot seeds from this company, Apricot Power. And these organic apricot seeds, they've been used for a long time from people dealing with various types of cancers. And they're pretty high in B17. People that are working on overcoming cancer, like each seed contains about 20 milligrams of vitamin B17. So they'll eat a couple of these seeds like every hour, and it has a capacity to sometimes decrease cancer, or at least that's what is purported, right? But when you were talking about all of the food on this planet and the small percentage that we eat, you reminded me they got a piece of scripture from Genesis 1:29 over here that says, "Then God said, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you." And I think we're entering an age where we're realizing that there is wisdom and magic and medicine in the natural plants that are bountiful on this planet. And if we get all of our stuff from the grocery store, we're going to be missing out on a lot of that magic and a lot of that bounty, and perhaps some of these natural quote unquote cures that have been provided for us that we may not be exposed to if we rely on Kellogg's and Coca-Cola and PepsiCo to feed us.
Absolutely.
Well, Brian, thank you so much, man. This has been a fun conversation. I appreciate you. Anything else you want to leave our audience with before we land this plane?
You got some good information. Please execute. Please share the information. I think that's hugely important in terms of your own journey. If you have your wife, your children who are become more understanding, more supportive, it's going to be easier for you to not only be a better person for them because of your health level, you'll be able to not be a burden on them later on in your life. So you got the information. It's called the internet. Look it up. Get to work.
Share it up, guys. Thanks for listening. Brian, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you, brother. And guys, go to givegoodwood.com, discount code GW15. And appreciate you listening and hanging out. Have a beautiful day.